The issue of how initiations would be carried out after Srila Prabhupada's departure became very prominent in the latter 1980s when the Ritvik or proxy guru theory was propounded. In January 1990, a debate took place in the San Diego temple on this issue between the proponents of the Ritvik theory and representatives from the governing body commissioners, the GBC. Later that year at the GBC meetings in Mayapur, a resolution was passed invalidating the Ritvik theory. Still, this theory is being promoted by various parties. We have produced this video to shed light on this issue.
My daughter was young, so she was playing with Upendra's child. His wife was also there. And Upendra came running out very excited from Prabhupada's rooms. And he really shocked. I mean, what I remember about it is that he was, he was really shocked. He said, you can't believe what Prabhupada just said. He said, I just don't believe what Prabhupada just said. He said that our children won't be initiated by him. They'll have to take initiation from somebody else. And why it is so strong in my memory is because I think at the time, at least I never thought that Prabhupada was ever going to go anywhere, that Prabhupada wasn't going to be there in the future.
So I have it recorded here in my diary on March the 7th, 1976. In the morning before massage, Prabhupada preached to me how we should all become gurus and each of us make thousands of disciples just as he has, and in this way spread Krishna consciousness all over. So that was actually in that same morning on the first day of the GBC meetings. Then in the evening, then again Prabhupada preached the same thing to all the GBC members.
The spiritual master is not a particular man, but a truth, Srila Prabhupada said on the occasion of Vyas Puj in Hamburg, 1969. The truth is to deliver people from samsara. He does it by pouring God's mercy on those burning in the forest fire of material life. He must inherit the power from the superior source. Srila Prabhupada said, this spiritual master's succession is not very difficult. These respects are due to my spiritual master. I am nothing. I am just like a peon. He simply delivers. That is the duty. Similarly, this parampara system is like this. At the same time, I shall request you to all become spiritual masters. Sri Guru Charana Padma Kebala Bhakti Sadma Sri Guru Charana Padma Kebala Bhakti Sadma.
When a movement's founder dies, it impacts, and there's no escaping it. When Muhammad died, there was the question of who will be his successor. And immediately there was conflict because some people thought he had said this, some people thought he had said that, some people thought he had implied this, and some people thought he had implied that. And so almost from the very beginning, although everyone pretty much agreed on the first successor, who was Muhammad's closest follower and a senior person and so on, after that, things get really rocky.
In May of 1977, Srila Prabhupada felt that he may leave soon, and he asked all the GBCs to come and be present with him. He asked the GBCs to consider how the movement would go on, and the GBCs met and formulated some questions to ask Srila Prabhupada.
The entire purpose of this was, from Prabhupada's point of view, to give us an opportunity to ask questions which he realized we would not bring up, because one of the moods that we tried to create was that, Srila Prabhupada, you're going to recover. You're not going to depart.
And one of the questions was how the process of initiation would go on after Srila Prabhupada's departure. So some of the members were delegated to represent the group and ask the questions to Srila Prabhupada. And Satsvarupa Maharaj was the spokesman for the group. So we formulated the questions. Satsvarupa Maharaj and the others went into the room and asked Srila Prabhupada.
And I asked, we have a question about after you're no longer with us. I try to say it in a sort of an indirect or polite way. But after you're no longer with us, I said, how will the initiations be conducted for first and second initiation? Now, this transcript of this talk has been studied, and the words have been tortured this way and that way, so that it can be very confusing and can appear very ambiguous. But rather than me play that role now to look back at and study the script, I can just tell you at the time that it was very clear what transpired to us, and that Prabhupada said that after his disappearance, his own disciples would become gurus, and who they initiated, they would become, as he said, the disciples of my disciples, and they would be regular gurus.
We asked him regarding about initiations, and he very clearly explained that those who would initiate would be his grand disciples.
So when Satsvarupa Maharaj came out and told us about Srila Prabhupada's answer to the question about initiations in the future, Satsvarupa Maharaj said very simply that that some of us would become gurus and give initiation, and the disciples that we initiated would be our disciples, and they would be Srila Prabhupada's grand disciples.
We had a minute book which we kept, and it would be worth looking at the minutes, and you'll see very clearly that all 17 or 18 or 19, whatever number GBC men who were present, all signed the minute book and expressed clearly this understanding.
The understanding was very clear to all of us at the time, and we all signed in the book.
So the whole discussion that takes place with Prabhupada it has this type of dual mentality from our side, where on the one hand we're being requested by Prabhupada to raise questions about his departure, yet it goes totally contrary to our own desire and even our own, it practically is impossible for us to accept that he wouldn't be present.
May 28, 1977, meeting, Vrindavan. Satsvarupa.
Then our next question concerns initiations in the future, particularly at that time when you're no longer with us. We want to know how a first and second initiation would be conducted.
Prabhupada.
Yes, I can recommend some of you, after this is settled up, I shall recommend some of you to act as officiating acharya.
Tamal Krishna.
That's called Ritvik.
Ritvik, yes.
Satsvarupa.
Then what is the relationship of that person who gives the initiation and the guru?
He's guru.
Satsvarupa.
But he does it on your behalf.
Prabhupada.
Yes. That is formality. Because in my presence one should not become guru. So on my behalf, on my order, Hamara Gai Guru hoye. He is actually guru, but by my order.
Satsvarupa.
So they may also be considered your disciples.
Prabhupada.
Yes, they are disciples. We consider. Who?
Tamal Krishna.
No, he's asking that these Ritvik acharyas, they're officiating, giving diksha. They're the people who they give diksha to. Whose disciple are they?
Prabhupada.
They're his disciples.
Prabhupada.
Who is initiated. His grand disciple.
Satsvarupa.
Yes.
Satsvarupa.
Then we have a question
Prabhupada.
When I order he become Guru, he becomes regular Guru. That's all. He becomes disciple of my disciple. That's it.
For the purpose of recording information, Srila Prabhupada's answers to the above questions are given as follows. 1. GBC members shall remain permanently. If a member leaves, the GBC can appoint new GBC members. 2. Srila Prabhupada said he will appoint several devotees who shall perform initiation in the future, even after his disappearance. The disciples they accept shall be their disciples, and Srila Prabhupada will be their grand spiritual master. 3. New translations of Vedic works can be published in the future, even after Srila Prabhupada's departure, but they can only be done by one who's very expert. At present, Srila Prabhupada acknowledged there are very few such men.
In a sense, ISKCON is blessed with a surfeit of teaching by Prabhupada. And I say blessed with a surfeit in the sense that everything that he said, or practically everything that he said, has been recorded by somebody somewhere. So you have this enormous body of material. Now, this is in one sense a proof texter's dream. There's so many statements out there that you can prove almost anything by going someplace and finding some statement that he made about something that you can say, well, Prabhupada said so-and-so. Well, he did, but where does that fit in the larger context? I mean, what was he specifically talking about? What was the specific setting in which he made that decision, or talked about that issue, or made that judgment? And it's that lack of proportion, that lack of context, that lack of the larger setting that it seems to me is one of the big problems.
The one thing I can say about Srila Prabhupada in all the times that I've proofread classes, lectures, conversations, is that Srila Prabhupada was very consistent. There was never any change. There was never any off-the-cuff kind of remarks that Prabhupada would make philosophically. There might be off-the-cuff remarks about, material things, but in terms of philosophy, Prabhupada was always serious, always shastric, always following in the general Vaishnava, in the general Siddhanta of the Gaudiya Vaishnavas and his Guru Maharaj and like that.
Letter to Tusta Krishnadas, December 2nd, 1975.
You can accept disciples without any limitation. That is the law of disciplic succession. I want to see my disciples become bona fide spiritual master and spread Krishna consciousness very widely. That will make me and Krishna very happy.
May 18th, 1972. Arrival lecture, Los Angeles.
So, we have got this message from Krishna, from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, from the 6 Goswamis, later on Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhakti Siddhanta Thakur, and we are trying our bit also to distribute this knowledge. Now, 10th, 11th, 12th. My Guru Maharaj is 10th, from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, I am 11th, you are the 12th.
One who is now the disciple is the next spiritual master. Srimad Bhagavatam, 2nd Canto, 9th chapter, 43rd verse, purport.
November 2nd, 1967. Letter to Madhusudan Das.
Anyone following the order of Lord Chaitanya under the guidance of his bona fide representative can become a spiritual master. And I wish that in my absence all my disciples become the bona fide spiritual master to spread Krishna consciousness throughout the whole world.
December 3rd, 1968. Letter to Hamsaduta.
I want that all my spiritual sons and daughters will inherit this title of Bhaktivedanta. so that the family transcendental diploma will continue throughout the generations. Those possessing the title of Bhaktivedanta will be allowed to initiate disciples. Maybe by 1975, all of my disciples will be allowed to initiate and increase the number of generations. That is my program.
January 25th, 1969, letter to Kirtananda.
Regarding your question about the disciplic succession coming down from Arjuna, it is just like I have got my disciples. So in the future, these many disciples may have many branches of disciplic succession. So in one line of disciples, we may not see another name coming from a different line, but this does not mean that person whose name does not appear was not in the disciplic succession.
When I came across Prabhupada's movement, one of the first things that struck me was that there was a disciplic succession, an unbroken line of teachers and students. From the time of Krishna, from the time of Lord Chaitanya, there was writings that passed on the words of Krishna, as in Bhagavad Gita. And so I felt that I could, through this disciplic succession, through the parampara system, have an access to spiritual knowledge that I could never get through the tradition that I was brought up in.
Every devotee must be able to also trace back their lineage through a system of initiation, because that initiation is also important, and especially for us, as Srila Prabhupada points out in Chaitanya Charitamrita, those who are conditioned souls must receive Panchatriki Diksha. One should learn how to worship the deity, chant Gayatri Mantra. These things all enhance our ability to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra and to also become purified.
For the Pancharatra, then you require the person must be present and you must accept the mantras from them, also with the Vedic. So then what you have is, for us, in application, the founder Acharya becomes everyone's guru on Siksha. It means his instructions everyone is following. But on the Diksha side, or the Pancharatric, that you must receive from someone who is present, who can give you those mantras. So this then sets up a very important dynamic that anyone who joins ISKCON becomes Prabhupada's disciple on the Bhagavad Gita, and that is assisted by the senior devotees in the movement, that they instruct us in how to understand and follow Prabhupada's instructions.
September 23rd, 1969, lecture, London.
How does one contact spiritual master? Through a book can you contact spiritual master?
No, you have to associate.
Can you associate through a book?
Yes, through books, also personal, because when you make a spiritual master, you have got it in personal touch, and not that in here you make a spiritual master. You make spiritual master concrete, so as soon as you make spiritual master, you should be inquisitive.
July 8th, there was a meeting of Srila Prabhupada and myself, and I believe Gauridas Pandit was also present, fanning Prabhupada. And I asked for the meeting. The reason being that as a secretary I was receiving more and more requests for initiation from Srila Prabhupada, for Prabhupada to initiate people, and I was not bringing them up to his attention because it was our understanding that the spiritual master accepts karma. And the last thing I wanted to see Prabhupada have to accept was any kind of karma which would lead to any more physical suffering or disability. So I was just holding the letters, but the number had reached a ridiculously large proportion, perhaps 200 or more people were waiting, and I wasn't answering. So finally I went to Srila Prabhupada and I said, I needed to speak to you about what to do about this. And I had my tape recorder there, Prabhupada's tape recorder. I recorded this. This is a recorded conversation, so anybody can listen to it. I said, what should we do? He said, gradually I will appoint some of you. And then he named gradually 9 people. Whoever is closest, he said. I mean, this is to my memory what he said. Whoever is closest. And of course, I again made it clear. I said, but Prabhupada, these people are your disciples, correct? In other words, when these people do perform the initiation ceremony, it's on your behalf. These are still your disciples, because, you know, it was very clear to me that in the presence of the spiritual master, one does not accept disciples. Plus, it was part of the overall point I was making, which is that this is just a temporary arrangement. This is not permanent. It's just right now while you're in this condition. And then I wrote a letter to the society, informing them that now these 11 people were authorized to, without having to consult Prabhupada, to initiate people, but that it would be that the people who were initiated would be Prabhupada's disciples, and their names should be sent to us so that we could keep them in the book. And then I suggested to Prabhupada, you know, that it would be good that if he signed the letter and approved it so that people would know that this is authorized. And I read it to him, and he approved of it. I think in the beginning of the letter I make mention that we've already met him in May. In other words, what will happen in the future is not at issue here. We're not talking about what will happen after Prabhupada departs. We're talking about now in Prabhupada's presence. That was what the whole purpose of the letter was. This is how things will go on now. As far as what would happen in the future, after Prabhupada departed, he'd already resolved that in May.
Tamal Krishna Goswami and myself, we were living together side by side, holding each other in our arms and crying when we thought Srila Prabhupada was dying, jumping into the air in elation when we thought his health was recovering. I mean, we were literally bonded together as nearly as one could be. Srila Prabhupada was cared for and prayed for by everyone in his party at every minute with the greatest sincerity and love that I've ever seen at any time in my life.
Later on in July, we got a letter saying that Prabhupada had appointed some Ritvik representatives who would begin, or who would take responsibility for the whole process of initiation. They would accept the candidates. It would not need to be intimated to Srila Prabhupada who the new candidates were, but that those people that they gave initiation to would be Prabhupada's disciples.
This letter, written on July 9th, 1977, by Tamal Krishna Goswami, signed by Srila Prabhupada, and sent out to all centers, is at the heart of the controversy concerning the Ritvik proxy guru dispute. The proponents of the Ritvik doctrine have focused in on this statement: now that Srila Prabhupada has named these representatives, temple presidents may henceforward send recommendations for first and second initiation to whichever of these 11 representatives are nearest their temple. So the word henceforward has been given such prominence that this word indicates that this system will go on in perpetuity. Now, if we take this word literally, and we take this document literally as Srila Prabhupada's final desire for initiation, then we have to apply that standard of precision in language and intent throughout the letter. And that is that these 11 representatives must be the ones to whom the recommendations are sent. If we take it to its logical conclusion, clearly these 11 disciples will, within 20, 30, 40, 50 years, all have disappeared from the planet. So what is the destiny of someone who is trying to follow this supposed final order of Srila Prabhupada? They need to find someone else to give them this initiation. But then they cannot be following this final order because Srila Prabhupada says here, these 11 representatives. We should approach the author of the letter to find out what he meant by the word henceforward.
It's just a choice of words I used. You know, if someone looks in a dictionary and finds it has a different meaning, somehow it gives a permanence. It certainly wasn't the intention. The letter was written by me. It was not dictated by Prabhupada. It was signed by me, and it's my letter. It's not Prabhupada's letter, so it's just astounding to me that somehow my letter turns out to be the final order. And it was my suggestion that Prabhupada approved it because I thought it would add weight to it so people would know it was authorized. And it's just astounding how this becomes the basis of a new understanding of the Sampradaya. If Prabhupada himself wanted to change something, first of all, he wouldn't have had someone write a letter for him. He would have written a letter, he would have dictated a letter, and he certainly would have signed it. And I can assure you he would not have done something which would have changed everything that he ever wrote in his books.
Srila Prabhupada made it clear that he wanted his disciples to initiate their own disciples after his departure. To think that he changed this view in the last few months without completely giving explication for days and hours so that it would be completely clear, that he hung it all on this one word henceforward, all on this one letter, the July 9th letter, is completely contrary to how we knew Srila Prabhupada did things for the 12 years that we knew his prominent preaching in the West.
What Prabhupada did with naming those 11 people is he named people who would act as his assistants to give initiation in his presence. And therefore I stated at Topanga Canyon that Prabhupada did not appoint gurus. These 11 people were not the divinely chosen 11 who thereafter were to carry on the disciplic succession, but the principle was that whoever was qualified of his disciples could go on to be initiating spiritual masters. That's exactly what I said in Topanga Canyon.
I think that if there had been a whole different mentality, there would be 79 gurus, or 122. The day you got initiated, you get the right to become a father when your father disappears, if you're qualified. Similarly, it is a disciple's duty to push forward. He may decide, I don't want to take disciples. I want to assist so-and-so. He's got that right. But if he feels the inspiration from within, and he has the qualifications, and he realizes what it means to take disciples, that it's a heavy responsibility, and if someone reposes their faith in him, that he should go ahead and do that. No appointment. If it had been more like that, you can bet your bottom dollar that Prabhupada would have spoken for days and hours and weeks on about how to set up this thing with the gurus. But he didn't, because he already had said it a million times. He said, my Guru Maharaj did not appoint anyone. It's by qualification.
And so it was likely that they would go on after his departure to accept disciples. But it was surely not limited to them. He was not saying, here are my successors. So I think Prabhupada himself was always cautious about this because he had always said, my Guru Maharaj did not appoint, a successor. And in Prabhupada's mind, the real successor in terms of the leadership was the GBC. But in terms of initiating, he did not want to just, and I think he's, was fully conscious and aware of the limitations of the 11 people that he named. So our mistake, is that we limited it to these 11 people and elevated them to a very special position when it should have been a much more widespread phenomenon.
When Prabhupada left in 1977, the next oldest person in leadership in ISKCON was 50 years younger than he was, at least. That is, there's a 50-year gap between Prabhupada and his senior disciples. I mean, I don't know of any movement that ever existed that had that kind of generational gap in it. I mean, you go from someone who is in his 80s to people who are in their 30s. If the older, the older leaders and disciples were in their 30s, and most were younger than that. And so you don't have that generational continuity. So what you have is leaders who not only are 50 years younger than Prabhupada, but have had none of the experience of life that he had. They haven't been married, they haven't had children, they haven't had jobs, they haven't, they haven't had careers, all of which Prabhupada had before he came to the U.S. He came to the U.S. at the age of 70. And he'd been through life.
It is a fact that Srila Prabhupada left us untimely. It would have been so much better if he would have stayed another 20 years so that our leaders would be in their 50s or in their 60s to take this important role when people in generally are done with their lives. So Srila Prabhupada left us very early, and the responsibility fell onto the head of people who are rather young and often not very mature, and therefore we encountered various problems.
Unfortunately, I think it was due to immaturity that when Srila Prabhupada said we should become guru, the only conception of guru that we had in our mind was Srila Prabhupada. Whatever worship he accepted, whatever privileges that he had, whatever level of servants that he has surrounded himself with, this was the idea of what a guru meant. Whatever opulences he had control of, this is what our idea of guru was, based on an immature understanding of really what the guru could be. Srila Prabhupada was obviously the super guru, but I think because we had no other idea of what a guru was.
We made those positions of Diksha Guru into something very, very big in a kind of imitation of Srila Prabhupada, and it was clearly wrong. Prabhupada did not elaborate on what he wanted there because it was a simple thing and there was nothing more to say about it.
There was very, very, very little cynicism in the beginning. Everyone was willing to give it a good try, and this is what Prabhupada wanted. And that, yeah, he had somehow empowered these persons. And then, now it's come out that among the mistakes we made was this exaggerated worship of the ISKCON gurus on the level of Prabhupada, with big vyasasans. All the godbrothers sit on the floor, and even it's implied that they should go through these gurus. Whereas we were warned, I was given a letter by Pradyumna right in the beginning. He said, this is not the Gaudiya tradition. The guru shouldn't sit on a big seat. He should just sit on a low seat like anyone else, and these different things. But we thought, no, we do it the way Prabhupada did it. We don't have to do it just the way the Gaudiya Math does it, or our parampara is Prabhupada. So Prabhupada sat on the big vyasasana, we sit on the big vyasasana.
I didn't see them as pure devotees, I have to say. I didn't see them as impure devotees. I saw them as my god brothers and god sisters, and we had an equal challenge, an equal responsibility to carry on this movement of presenting pure spiritual knowledge.
So we were trying to act like Prabhupada, to whom beautiful young girls could come, to whom millions of dollars could come into his hands. And boom, 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 everyone was just falling down. It was, and it was seen that we're taking too much on, and we're not qualified and pure. And I think that's where all these schismatic and deviant philosophies have come about, out of the anger, out of the heartbreak of all the misuse of what was given.
In 1971, Srila Prabhupada was in Japan, and he received news that some disciples were preaching a deviant philosophy that Srila Prabhupada was God. And although he was thousands of miles away, he reacted very strongly, and he completely demolished the false philosophy of the disciples. Although Srila Prabhupada was the most merciful, he would not tolerate philosophical deviation that could disturb the spiritual lives of the devotees in the movement and the movement itself.
In 1974, when, at least in England, there was this controversy because Hansuduta had become the GBC. He had just become the GBC of the UK. And a lot of my godbrothers were treating him like a guru. They were wearing Hansuduta buttons, and they were dancing around him in kirtans because he was a very charismatic leader. And when Prabhupada heard this, he from Hansa Dutta, he thinks now he's become Paramhans. He said, generally speaking, the disciple doesn't take that type of worship until the Guru has departed.
There was a question of one of his disciples, Siddhaswarupananda, who had gotten a following, even in Prabhupada's own presence, and that disturbed a lot of us. We didn't like that. He was bringing people to himself rather than directing them to Srila Prabhupada, and we felt that that was wrong. As for the point that his men are more attached to him, Siddhaswarup, than Prabhupada, Prabhupada said it was all right. It is not harmful. Each of us has to become a guru and take many disciples, but as a matter of etiquette, one should wait until his own spiritual master is left before accepting disciples. Later, he told me it was not such a serious offense, and in reply to whether one has to be a pure devotee to make disciples, he said that one has to be strictly following the principles. That is a requirement. Then he can be considered on a pure platform.
April 26, 1968. Letter to Janardhan Das.
A person who is liberated acharya and guru cannot commit any mistake. But there are persons who are less qualified or not liberated, but still can act as guru and acharya by strictly following the disciplic succession.
June 29, 1972. Room conversation, San Diego.
So far designation is concerned, the spiritual master authorizes every one of his disciples, but it is up to the disciple to carry out the order, able to carry out or not. It is not that spiritual master is partial. Yes. He designates one and rejects other. Yes. He may do that. If the other is not qualified, he can do that. Yes. But actually his intention is not like that. Yes. He wants that each and every one of his disciples become as powerful as he is, or more than. That is easy. Just like father wants every son to be as qualified or more qualified than the father. But it is up to the student, up to the son, to raise himself to that standard. If you are incapable of raising yourself to the standard of becoming spiritual master, that is not your spiritual master's fault, that is your fault.
August 21st, 1968. Letter to Achyutananda and Jai Govinda.
Please accept my blessings. I have received so many letters from both of you, and I am replying today summarily, especially your joint letter dated July 27, 1968, and Jai Govinda's letter dated August 19, 1968. The first thing, I warn Achyutananda, do not try to imitate. You are not in a proper position now to initiate anyone. Besides that, the etiquette is that so long the spiritual master is present, all prospective disciples should be brought to him. Therefore, if anyone is anxious to be initiated, he should first of all hear our philosophy and join chanting for at least 3 months. And then, if required, I shall send chanted beads for him if you recommend. As we are doing here, don't be allured by such maya. I am training you all to become future spiritual masters, but do not be in a hurry.
There's validity to Srila Prabhupada being in the center. I think everyone likes to see that. But we can't deny the fact that Prabhupada has empowered people and he's asked us to take up responsibilities.
Very often in our society there's a concept that guru means Diksha Guru, and we don't recognize that our parents, the Brahmins, sannyasis, our temple presidents, senior devotees, mothers, so on, they're also all shiksha gurus, because if they're also giving us transcendental knowledge by which we're advancing in spiritual life, then we should recognize that that is a guru. We need to be able to show our respect and appreciation for them. And it's that culture of respect and appreciation which I'm concerned to see within our society. I think many more devotees would be less disturbed with the Diksha Guru culture had they actually seen that respect is given where it's actually due to those who are regularly and daily training most of our devotees both within and without our temples.
August 22nd, 1973. London Vyas Puja Address.
I am very much hopeful that my disciples who are now participating today even if I die, my movements will not stop. I am very much hopeful. All these nice boys and girls who are taken so seriously, you will have to become spiritual master. You, all my disciples.
April 13th, 1977. Morning walk, Bombay.
Like father, like son. You should be Gauranga Bhakta, Jane. Everyone. Therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Amara aya guru hai tare desh. He asked everyone, just become guru. Follow his instructions. You become guru. Amara agya. What I say, you do. You become a guru. Where is the difficulty?
Like we said, let the buyer beware. And you have to do your research. You can't blindly surrender to someone. You can't blindly surrender your life onto one person. You have to do it intelligently. So if someone's going to sentimentally take the shelter of a spiritual master and not really do the research, not explore the relationship, I think people think that once you ask to aspire for a spiritual master, that the contract's already signed there. But that's the part of the waiting period, to make sure that the relationship is proper and that it's working. But a lot of people will accept a spiritual master and sentimental reasons, get initiated, and then later on develop doubts. But it's very important while you're aspiring for the spiritual master to explore the relationship, the both of you, whether he's a qualified spiritual master or whether you're a qualified disciple. That's why the relationship with a living guru is so important.
In specific cases within ISKCON, within GBC, we are all humans and we are all learning, and there have been difficulties individually, and this is a revolutionary movement. And when it's as Prabhupada said, that as we progress, we're going to find more and more difficulties because Maya is really going to attack. Initially, people will just ignore, but then they're going to really, rise or stand up.
There were some mistakes, but this is, after all, young movement, and there are some mistakes, but there are lots of things which are done rightly.
Real final order is Prabhupada instruction. Real instruction in Prabhupada is we need to working together in cooperation, in harmony, in Krishna's consciousness.
When Prabhupada arrived in Paris for the first time at the Rula Sur temple, he came in and sat as Vyasa-san and gave his lecture, his arrival speech. And I remember Prabhupada at one point sort of pausing and looking out into the devotees. And great compassion and great, almost like with tears in his eyes, he looked at us and pleadingly said, no matter what happens, never leave ISKCON. No matter what difficulties you go through, never leave ISKCON.
I, as a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, have not come up to a standard where I can be able to represent Prabhupada so emphatically that I can be of such a guru, that Krishna is working so much through me, that I can inspire others to be like that, and we can have many, many powerful persons who unequivocally are being seen as powerful spiritual teachers, spiritual masters, who are pleasing Prabhupada to the greatest extent.
Certainly with a collected effort of all the devotees here who have got many, many years of experience under their belt, something good is going to come out of the union and the communication of all of us. We have to put motivations to the side, and we certainly have to take steps towards humility and put less emphasis towards insisting on honor, glory, pompous ceremony, and so on like that. Emphasis should be more towards acts of modesty and humility, and the whole world will love you for it if you do that.
Although I myself am, you could say, a sannyasi, GBC member, initiating guru, I do sympathize and have my own personal experiences of being moved out of temples, being unfairly treated, and a victim of abuse of the position of guru. I still experience that same thing and still see it at the present time. However, I just don't know any other alternative than working within, because I'm convinced that that's what Srila Prabhupada wanted. And despite the fact that sometimes we become very much hurt and harmed by certain treatment that we feel within the society, but then Lord Chaitanya says that even if you trample me, still I remain your servant. I think Srila Prabhupada also expected, even if we get trampled by the society sometimes, or its members, we still need to remain as members of the society and its servants and work everything out within.
Joined ISKCON originally because we wanted to serve and please Srila Prabhupada. And throughout the years, even outside of ISKCON, we were with the conviction that we were trying to do what was best to serve and please Srila Prabhupada. And we ultimately came to the conclusion that to come back to ISKCON is the best way we can serve Srila Prabhupada. Whatever problems may be in his society, to help to make it strong, to help to be exemplary within his society is the best service we can offer.
This video is uncensored. No guru or sannyasi has been consulted during its production process. There has been no attempt by any GBC member or anyone else to influence its content or conclusions. Its content is solely the responsibility of the producer, ITV. Regarding the present schism that exists in the ISKCON society over the issue of initiations, Srila Prabhupada teaches us how to view such differences of opinion. In the purport to the 4th canto, 30th chapter, 8th verse, he says, "Disunity between individual souls is so strong within this material world that even in a society of Krishna consciousness, members sometimes appear disunited due to their having different opinions and leaning towards material things. Actually, in Krishna consciousness, there cannot be two opinions. There is only one goal, to serve Krishna to one's best ability. If there is some disagreement over service, such disagreement is to be taken as spiritual. Those who are actually engaged in the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead cannot be disunited in any circumstance. This makes the Supreme Personality of Godhead very happy and willing to award all kinds of benedictions to his devotees. Hare Krishna, and thank you for taking the time to watch."